believe this is now our 6th installment, which is awesome. Massive thank you to everybody that's been a part of it, of the Expert Buy Sell series here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Coming up in just a matter of moments, we'll be joined by Alex Barutha, the chief NBA editor over at RotoWire. He's got 4 buys and sells for us to cover. But before we do that, just quickly, welcome to the show. I'm Dan Besbris. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Besbris, at Old Man Squad over on the new Blue Sky Network, Old Man Squad Fantasy on Instagram. Please take a moment to hit that like button while you're settling in. Subscribe, however you're taking in the content. And then, of course, for those of you listening on Apple or Spotify, hit that 5-star review. It does actually matter quite a bit. But screw delays. Let's get Alex back in here. I'm actually doing multiple shows with multiple Alexes today. 'Tis a beautiful Alex Thursday. Mr. Barutha, what's going on, my man? How you been?
I'm doing well. I've been enjoying some NBA Cup. My Milwaukee Bucks managed to slide in to the going to Las Vegas. So that is exciting.
Yeah, you know, it's weird. I don't want to go too far down this side path, but I've been thinking back about last year, and it was the Lakers and the Pacers, right, that made the finals, and they just looked beyond gassed for like 2 weeks afterwards. Do you think that the NBA, by kind of making a much more leisurely pace this year, they've semi-solved that issue?
Probably. I do really like that they made the schedule more sparse around the cup
Really
instead
good.
of, because I think last year it was like, oh, here are the cup games, and then the next day would be like, here's 12 games the
Yeah.
next day. And then so I do think what they've done will probably help, and is really just nice for people like us who work in fantasy NBA content and just like want to have a little breather.
Do you
It's nice.
ever, Alex, do you ever get like stir crazy in moments like this? Because I have this two-way pull of like, I get to this 2-game card at the end of the day and I'm like, well, what the hell was that? And like, I feel like I have a bunch of things that I need to be doing and they're not there for me to do them. So I don't like, and then my body gets really amped up and I need to like find something to work on. So like, for the last couple days, I went to my mom's house and I took this big box of old baseball cards out of the garage to show my kid. And I've just been like, every time I'm getting stir crazy, I'm just like pulling out 50 of them and just rifling through to see what crap I had from the late 80s. Does that ever hit you, that stir crazy feel?
I'll say it is weird when there's like 2 games on and I just watch both games and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I saw everything that happened tonight. I guess I'll go to bed, or I'll just watch TV for a bit or whatever. Yeah, so it is a little bizarre. Yeah.
It is totally bizarre. All right, you are driving the boat today. You have 4 choices. Before we do that, quick reminder, everybody, BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. They've got the earliest odds, in-game live betting, and also the opportunity to watch the action as it happens, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football to the NBA and college basketball, NHL, and UFC. So head to BetOnline today, and don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. I do not know the players that Alex has brought to today's show, so where shall we head first?
When you said 6 people had done the show before me, or 5 people, I'm like, oh no, I bet everybody's said these names before. We'll see.
We'll see.
My first one is Cam Johnson of the Brooklyn Nets. Look, he's playing really well. I actually think most of what he is doing is pretty sustainable. He's not shooting way over his head in any categories. Usage isn't crazy high. My concern, as always, with a guy like Cam Johnson is just he's about to turn 29, actually. One of the like sneaky older than you think guys in the NBA. Brooklyn is not very good, so he's certainly a trade candidate. His contract is fairly friendly for another team to bring on if they want him. But not only that, he has just not been that healthy throughout his career. Most games played in a season is 66. I know there's the COVID stuff going on in there, but he does have an injury history. And it's just, what are the chances that Johnson is seeing this kind of usage, seeing this kind of minutes, and healthy at any point going forward, not just like in March and April?
Yeah, and actually, so it's funny, he hadn't come up until this morning. So the 2 Alexes picked Cam Johnson, and Rickling was very high on him coming into the year, but also was sort of willing to acknowledge, like, you cash in when you can cash in. What we didn't talk about on our earlier show was the injury stuff, because he's had the meniscus deal repeatedly now. I think the two to this, if it's the same one or both menisci or something like that, I forget exactly what the deal is there. But yeah, he hasn't really made it through a season. What we talked about a bit more was, will he be on Brooklyn in March? So if you're a head-to-head player, that's a big concern. Less so on the Roto side, even if there's a diminished role, like, it doesn't go from something to nothing with Roto. Like, you've been able to log whatever he did prior to that point, and still kind of counts towards your finishing move there. My question then is, since let's get into the weeds a tiny bit on Cam Johnson. What do you, and this is hard. There's no right answer to this, but I'm going to ask a question anyway. What do you think you might be able to retrieve for him? What kind of a prize could you get back?
Good question. I think this is hard. This is the tough thing with, I think,
All of
sell highs is just like the fantasy community in general. It's just so much more informed. It's hard. There are a lot of guys where it's just like people know, they know what the situation is. We're writing about it. We talk about these guys all the time. But I think if you're trying to move off of Cam Johnson, ideally you could get someone you feel like is, I mean, top 50 back is probably your absolute ceiling right now. Like, I don't really think anybody's trading you like Derek White for him.
right.
Zach LaVine, that could be like a your problem for my problem. Miles Turner, the Miles Turner range, it's Jalen Suggs range. Van Vliet's kind of having a down year. Maybe you could like send out Cam Johnson, who's hot, and bring back Van Vliet, who's a little cold or hasn't been doing
Ooh,
as much
I like
this
that.
year, and hope for something. I think realistically, you shouldn't settle for like less than a top 75, like guaranteed player, but that's sort of the range that we're talking about.
Oh, I love it. I like a lot of that stuff. Who do you got for number 2? That was fun. I like that one.
Well, Nikola Vucevic, unfortunately,
Uh-oh.
who I think is a pretty common name too,
No,
and
but
someone who
hold on. Before you even go into the explanation on this,
okay.
right now, no matter how much we talk about him on the show, everyone's just mad at Josh. He takes all of the heat for the Vooch stuff. So let's see, Alex, if we can take some of the heat on today's show.
Okay.
Tell me, and I'm actually going to have you skip over one part. No, you know what? Screw that. So let's start at the top. Let's destroy this poor lad. What's the deal with Vooch, other than the fact that he's obviously sold his soul for an Alf Pog type of Simpsons thing going on right now? What the hell? This is insanity.
So he is shooting hot. Like, let's just put that aside. He's absolutely not a 47% 3-point shooter or whatever it is. That will come down. He's also shooting well from like the short mid range. Like he's just shooting hot. I think some of it is real from the perspective of like this Bulls team runs up and down the court like crazy. They are super fast paced. They just put up a ton of points. They are all offense. And Vooch just gets open looks. He just does. And we know he's got a good hook shot and all that. But the reason that I would be selling high on it is not too different from the reason I would be selling high on Cam Johnson, which is Vucevic is obviously on the trade market. He's 34 years old. I know he's been really healthy lately. That was not how it was early in his career. But, you worry about like a ticking time bomb situation with a guy like Vucevic. And if he gets traded, the usage goes down. And maybe if he doesn't get traded, then he has a back injury in March that may or may not be real. But yeah, those are the primary concerns.
The one that I keep pointing at, and it sort of doesn't seem to matter how many times I point at it, is the effective field goal number right now, which is, honestly, like, I want to try to make sure that I'm shining a positive light on that, because it's really remarkable what he's doing. His effective field goal percent this year is at 66%. And he's never had a season over 57 in his entire career to this point. Like, he is having the ultimate 34-year-old career season in every sort of offensive metric. But, you brought up the other thing. Like, we know he's on the trade market. We know that he's been healthy for a very long time, and guys sort of are until they aren't, kind of thing. But then it comes down to the other half, and you you did so well with Cam Johnson. I'm going to put you right back on the hot seat again
Sure.
because of how informed everybody is, and not everyone, because there is one guy that is mad in the YouTube comments like daily when we bring up Vooch. So I see you, bud. I know you're there. Like, I'll acknowledge you. Aside from that dude who makes up one like whatever percentage of the fantasy populace at large, everybody that replies is some microcosm, right, of like the overall thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people have, again, like, heard what we've said and what we've written. What can you get back for Vooch now? Because he is a bona fide mid-first rounder so far this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, I mean, so last year he was kind of like a third round, fourth round guy, and that's who I think you realistically you could get back. And always when you're trying to trade with people, it's sometimes it can depend on what your league format is. But if I'm near the bottom of my league or I'm in the middle of the pack and like what I need is like are rebounds and points and efficient rebounds and points, I would probably be interested in Vucevic for the right price. Like you may have to send these offers to specific people, right?
Mm.
For you to get value back and take back what you need. But I actually think it's probably the same range, maybe a little bit higher than what we were talking about uh before, where I don't know, someone well, you're not gonna be able to get like Bam out of bio for him, but
I mean, maybe.
I
Probably not, but maybe. Like,
may yeah.
where's Bam at? Bam's what, 42 right now? It's not impossible. Someone might be annoyed that Adebayo's still shooting
If
44%.
I think if you are like a Jamal Murray optimist, this might be your opportunity to
The-
trade like Vooch for Jamal Murray because I think that is where when we talk a lot about these like sell high guys, where you have to a lot of times send like a this guy's really hot for me, and the player that the other team has is really just frustrating the fantasy manager.
Mm.
Like if I had Jamal Murray, I might be like, wait, he's not playing very well. Or if I had Dejounte Murray, I'd be like, is this guy ever gonna like start playing well? And if you're someone who happens to be high on those guys longer term, you might be able to slide in with Vucevic.
Do you think that when Vooch cools, because it'll happen, like, I don't know how long it's going to go like this. Do you think he will? Okay. This is a very bad question, but maybe it's more about like how you think through a player in a trade. Because again, there's absolutely positively no way for any of us to know the answer to what I'm about to ask. But I'm going to ask it as more of a philosophical type of question, which is when we make these trades, the assumption is Vooch has done this to this point in the season. He's a mid-first rounder, 7 weeks into the NBA season. That's awesome. That's been logged, that's been banked for those of us that have him. Now you have to like start a new timer basically from this day to the end of the season, and what's happened already becomes sort of inconsequential. What like and I can't figure this one out either, but I'm just sort of trying to work through the thought process of, do you expect guys to be like worse than the final projection? Or is it just that with someone like Vooch, maybe you're like, look, at some point he's just going to go back to being what he was before? How do you kind of reconcile those two things in your brain?
You're sort of asking like the hard regression versus soft regression question?
Yeah, a little bit.
Like,
And then like, how does that influence how you make your trades and timelines and things like that?
I mean, I'll say with Vucevic specifically, I think the only thing he's doing that's really unsustainable for him is the 3-point shooting. And so if he goes back to shooting, let's say 35% from three the rest of the season, he'll go from like 21 points per game to like 18 points per game or 19 points per game or something like that if some of the other shooting comes down. And he's still going to be like ranked 35th or 40. So, it depends on the player and what you think is sustainable or not sustainable. But yeah, sometimes the regression hits hard and it's like 5 games they can't shoot. Like it's like a Coulibaly thing. Like
Right.
Coulibaly was hot, and he's actually, well, this is a spoiler. He is on my buy low. Um,
We'll go there next.
but it's the exact like the hard regression versus the slide.
Let's go to Bilal next, since he already popped up in the. And by the way, haven't talked about him at all on the show to this point, or at least on buy low, sell high shows to this point. I've talked about him plenty because every time we were like, surely he's bottomed out now. And then he had that, it's like an 0 for 11 game or something in there. But like his peripheral stuff is rad. So tell me why you want to get your hands on Bilal going forward.
You said it. It's the peripheral stuff. I will say he's available in like I think he's like 35% rostered on Yahoo leagues or something. Like you can actually, if you're in a shallower league, you can just straight up pick up Coulibaly.
Yeah.
But I'm sure a lot of people listening to this show are in like 14 or 16 team leaguers. I think so. After he had his hot stretch, he went through an 11 game stretch where he averaged 8 points a game on 29% shooting over
Oof.
11 games.
That's
Horrible.
That's that Rob Covington from like the beginning of 2017 or whatever year that was. Oh,
Exactly.
but it's nice that the hot came before the cold, though, because if the cold came first, no one would ever touch him. And at least now people have been like, well, but there was that time.
And people are dropping him everywhere. But the
Yeah.
thing is, even with how terribly he was shooting, and I don't know how much like points versus category leagues discussion you do on this show, but like he was still averaging 26 fantasy points per game in those 11 games, which is like back end standard league for a points league. So the fact that he cannot score the basketball, he was still rosterable. And in category leagues, if you're rostering him for anything but efficient shooting, it's completely worth it. It's completely worth it. I mean, it's just if someone was, and this is sort of my argument sometimes, because you get this idea of like, oh, Coulibaly, we're all so high on him and he starts playing badly. But if you just put all that aside and just made up a player, just made him up, and he was averaging 12, 5, and 3 with a steal and a half a block, and yes, efficiency wasn't, everyone would be picking him up off the waiver wire. Everybody. So that's sort of my argument about the regression stuff. And just long term with the Wizards, Brogdon gets traded, Valanciunas gets traded or sits. All those vets, they sit or they get traded, and it Coulibaly should see more usage.
It feels like you could get him for pennies right now. No?
I think so. The problem is he just scored 17 points, and now people are going to be like, "Oh, he's so back." But yeah, hopefully someone in your league is willing to trade him after his 17-point outburst. Yes.
This game log, I gotta highlight it before we go on. Starting on what the hell date is that? Scrolling. November 22nd through the game before this last one. 2 for 9. I'll just read the field goal percent. 22, 44. He exploded. 27, 17, 25, 14, 0. That was the 0 for 10. 22, and then 46. This was this last one where he was a bit more involved on offense, and yes, that was a little bit better. However, over that same timeline, steals 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1. Rebounds, there was a 2 and a 4 mixed in there, but generally it's kind of like between 3 and 7 range. He was generally around 3.5, 4 assists during that span. So there is all that other stuff you were talking about. If you had to trade him, again, talking to Alex Barutha here, at Barutha Alex, by the way, if you flip that around, that's how you can find him on social media. Speaking of teams that haven't dropped him yet, what do you think it would take in terms of just like a player rank to go get him? Would you go as high as a proven top 100, or would you be trying to go a little cheaper?
I would be. It's hard depending on your league. It is hard to go much cheaper because he's like, for a lot of people, he is like their fringe bench option.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you're trading him, you just try to, or if you're trading for him, I should say, you should just try to throw out like your worst player and see if they'll take it back, to be honest, because I think a lot of people who have Coulibaly in a 12-team league he is on their cut list as to like, well, if someone better comes along, I'll just cut him. So if you can just send them your worst player who, yeah, maybe a top 100 or someone you think will finish like 85th, but you don't think has much upside. I think that is like, I don't know if this is a great example, but maybe if you were rostering like, this is tough to say. He's playing really well right now, but someone like Ayo Dosunmu,
That would have been
DeAndre, if you don't need what DeAndre Ayton is giving you, you might be able to flip that. Which I know that might sound like the person who has DeAndre Ayton like clearly won that trade, but Ayton's really only giving you points and rebounds. So if you want the assists, steals, and blocks, you could go Coulibaly. But yeah, just someone who you're not consistently using on your roster.
Before we get to your fourth and final name, Alex, what are you working on these days? Let's do a little promo time.
What am I working on? I think
what are you working on?
yeah. I mean, frankly, it's a lot of editorial stuff, but I will say we publish a best bets column Monday through Friday. Actually, it is every day. I'm on it Monday through Friday personally. So we do, spreads, I love player props. Like, so that's my main thing. That's my consistent content production Monday through Friday is the best bets column and the podcast, which I am on, the RotoWire NBA podcast, which I'm on Mondays and Fridays.
That is delightful. Again, you can find Alex on both of the social medias these days, Twitter and Blue Sky. Blue Sky is Barutha, just the last name. And on Twitter, it's Barutha Alex, Barutha, the spelling on that last name. Fourth and final name, where we headed to wrap this sucker up.
Well, I'm still kind of debating between two now. I'm really bringing it down to the wire here.
All right, we can go lightning round. You want to do both?
Well, I just got two names, so maybe you tell me which one you find more interesting. I got Devin Vassell and Zach Edey.
Let's go Edey, because we did Vassell. I think two analysts in a row went. We had this was another one of those ones where nobody said it for like the first few, and then it was like bang bang double. By the way, strong. I assume Vassell was going to be a buy low for you. Yeah, massive agree on that one. I love it, and we got to go do it now because he might accidentally get moved into the starting lineup before you know it, and then no one will want to sell him anymore. Let's talk Zach Edey, because I'm like almost fully agnostic on Zach Edey. So whatever you say, I'm going to probably roll with or possibly play some devil's advocate. I haven't even decided what I'm going to do right now. Lay it on me. What are we going to get out of Zach Edey when he comes back from this ankle thing?
So, well, the ankle thing is why I think it's a good opportunity to trade for him, because he played pretty poorly early on in the season and some people dropped him. And then he started playing well for like 2 weeks and then he got hurt and now nobody thinks about him. So I think, especially because there's a good chance someone spent like a real draft capital on him. And if someone is at the bottom of their fantasy league and they got Edey on their roster, you might be able to just come over the top and be like, I'll just give you someone that plays right now. And you send me back Zach Edey and I will put him on my R for another 2 weeks or however long this ankle injury lasts. You can get your production now. I think it just kind of went under the radar how well Edey had started playing before he got hurt. So in his 8 games before the game that he suffered his injury, he's playing 23 minutes a game, which is all we were kind of hoping for out of Edey. 13 points on 64% shooting, 86% from the free throw line. So if you're in a category league at a center, that's good. 9 rebounds and 1.4 steals, 1.1 blocks, or the other way around, actually. 1.4 blocks, 1.1 steals. That's just a very solid standard league center. And especially a lot of people like on Yahoo are playing in 2 center leagues. That's the kind of guy I would just love to have on my bench and start on 4-game weeks. And even with as bad as he was playing early in the season, 8 category per game, he's 140th. I know that's not like blowing anybody's socks off, but when you take like the whole package, I think that might be better than some people assumed.
What do you think it would take to get him? Feels like another guy that could be had pretty cheap.
Another guy that I think you could just send a fairly consistent, low upside, top 100 player to somebody who just needs production right now. That's near the bottom of their league.
I'm intrigued. I have to admit, I hadn't really, much like the general populace, I hadn't thought about Edey all that much because he went down and it was just like, all right, afterthought. Because the Grizzlies are like, they weren't fully healthy, but it wasn't that they were missing big men really at that point. It was more the guards that had gone MIA to various injury type of stuff. But he is, and I mean, even in college, he wasn't a bad foul shooter. I think he was around 70%, something like that. So he's not going to tank you there. He's not, despite being like one of the biggest humans on planet Earth, he's not that prolific of a shot blocker. So I don't know that that's a thing that's going to change markedly for him. But just like being a big man who doesn't destroy your field goal or your free throw percent and rebounds and helps field goal percent, that's like one of the easiest paths to fantasy value in 9-cat is just being okay at the non-big man stuff and decent at the big man stuff.
Yeah, and I think he's actually been underrated as a scorer. We got a question on one of our podcasts which was who do you like as an upside play for the rest of the season, Edey or Klingon? I have a hard time with that. I
Yeah.
said Klingon just for the upside because it's like if they both saw 30 minutes a game, I think Klingon would be better in fantasy. But then I was looking at Edey's numbers. He averages 20 points per 36 minutes. Edey does 20 points a game per 36. That was way higher than I would have assumed. And it has been pretty consistent scoring, but I think that's been under the radar. Now, will he ever see 36 minutes? No. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. But the hope is that he can eventually just ease his way into upper 20s minutes at some point in the season and keep giving you that good scoring and rebounds and blocks.
Alex, you are officially off the lukewarm chair, whatever that may be. Thank you as always, seriously, for carving out the time. These series of shows for me are easily the most fun for one joking reason. The joking reason is like you guys pretty much do all the work and I just have to sit here. I just press record and then we roll. But also it's just so nice to get like really well thought out opinions from the best of the best out there. So thank you for that. Thank you for bringing some names to the table that we had not discussed on the pod in a while. You are the man, number one. Number two, again, everybody check him out. Find him on social at Barutha Alex, Barutha. You can figure out how to spell Alex. I think you guys got that one on your own. And just Barutha. You don't need the Alex over at Blue Sky. Thank you. That's again, like I never know how to finish off this the chat, but like thank you so much. This was awesome.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
I want to do another one with you. Can I get you back next month?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yes.
Those were some good ones. That was fun. And, it was funny because before we went on air, he was like, I'm sure you guys probably talked through all these guys already. Nope. Cam Johnson, we hadn't until earlier today. So both Alexes hit on Cam Johnson. Nikola Vucevic, yes, he's someone that's been talked about, but there's like all these different reasons to think about it. And one thing that I really liked with Alex's, the way he was working through the trade scenarios was that he wasn't overreaching in what he was trying to get back. Kind of an understanding that when you go out there with Vooch, you can't ask for Devin Booker. I know that Vooch is ranked higher than Booker right now, but even though we're 25 games into the season for some of these teams, value of players is still tied enough either to A, where they were drafted, or B, career numbers that someone out there who drafted Booker at 20 is not going to give him up for Vooch, who was getting drafted at 55. You have to be reasonable in your expectations. Now, that said, maybe if you have time, you can start at a higher target and work your way back down. That is for those that are in, one or two leagues and you've got plenty of time to kind of go back and forth. Maybe you're not even just sending out an offer because think about a Yahoo public prize league. You don't know the people in it and you can't really message folks all that easily. So just firing offers out there and you're kind of at the whim of whether people respond to them at all. Somebody rejects it in 15 minutes. Great. That seems like they're, an active fantasy manager and you can try the next one down the board, but you probably don't have 3 weeks to work your way from a top 30 guy. Hey, here's Vooch. Give me top 30. You don't want that? All right, here's top 35. Oh, you don't want that? Here's I'll take 40. I'll take 45. Do I hear 40? Do I hear 41? Do I hear 44? That could take forever. If you're in a league with people, opportunity to text message someone, call them, whatever, you might be able to work your way through some scenarios in one text message conversation with a person. So you kind of have to know your league. You kind of have to understand where your low and your high bar should be in terms of return and things of that nature. And then also veering into a different direction here at the end of the thought, bringing up two really quiet names right now in Coulibaly and Zach Edey, who again, Alex is totally right. Nobody's thought about Zach Edey in a month. Literally no one. I'm not sure even the Grizzlies have thought about him in a month. He's just been very slowly healing up for a team that's been playing well. And so they haven't really needed him all that much. But it's true. In about 20, 21, 22 minutes a game before he got hurt, he was putting up second center value. So if you can get a second center right now who's getting somewhat close to returning for, I don't know, look at guys that have some name recognition kind of in that like 100 to 130 range, call them the, the better filler level options. That's the swap you should be looking at making. Someone like a Jeremy Grant who has absolutely no upside in my eye. And yeah, Jeremy Grant's actually a tiny bit of a buy low right now because he's shooting 38% overall, but I still think that like his season is probably going to end early or he might get traded somewhere and blah, blah, blah. Ayo Dosunmu was a name that got brought up. He was great when Kobe White was out. Perhaps someone didn't notice that that's what it was tied to. I mean, even my good buddy Mike Conley, who's also a bit of a buy low and is going to slowly work his way up the board. I mean, you're talking about a guy whose upside is like top 80 range, best case scenario this year. Go get somebody who maybe could push a little beyond that. Nick Richards, Buddy Hield is hot right now. Keegan Murray is also a little bit of a buy low, but opportunity. Aaron Gordon, who got off to that quick start. Drew Holiday's an interesting one. They might be somewhat equal there. I don't know that that's the one you're looking at. Grady Dick is about to put up some big numbers, so maybe wait for a couple of games without Scotty Barnes. Throw him out there. Benedict Mathurin, who Alex Rickling brought up as a sell guy. I don't think people have realized how bad he's gotten again after that really hot start once he moved into the starting five for the Pacers. Someone like a Draymond Green. We all have this idea that he's much better than he actually is these days. Draymond doesn't do that much anymore. Punt points? Okay, well, that's a different animal. All right, wrapping it up. That's the end of the show. Massive thank you once again to Alex Barutha, both Alexes today. Today was a day of Alexes. How many Alexes are there in the fantasy space? I'm glad you asked. The answer is 3 that I know of. Alex Burns would be the other one. He was on back in October. Not to be outdone, there are 3 Matts, and I think that might be the and there's 3 Dans. Or there might be 4. There's actually 4 Dans, but one of them doesn't use his real name and his Twitter handle. So I think we might actually be the winners. Yeah. Take that, Alex's and Matt's. There may be 3 of you, but of us, there are 4. Alrighty. We done. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. Please do subscribe on your way out. That's the big thing. However you're taking to the content, freaking subscribe. Hit that like button as well. 5-star reviews are also extraordinarily helpful. Go find any of the Alexes. Go find Alex Barutha on social media so you can hit him up. He deserves to have way more follows than he does because he's doing tremendous work over at RotoWire. And I'll be back with you guys tomorrow. We got a hot, cold show in the morning. We've got Thunder Dan. So one of the Dans that we've been referring to. He'll be the second Dan that's come on the show. I'm not including myself. That'll be our Friday episode. Saturday, my hope is that we can kind of jam out a kind of a recap show since we'll finally have some games to talk about for the first time in forever on the weekend. And then we'll wrap it back around to a beginning of a new week. I'm Dan for Old Man Squad. Thanks so much again, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow.